and they did DNA analysis and found it is a new species of frog. It has been found up and down the East Coast. I don't think it's been found in Maryland yet, but again, programs like FrogWatch can kind of help expand the range of the species.
All right, welcome everybody to our June speaker in our Land and Wildlife Speaker Series. I'm Luke Macaulay with the University of Maryland. I'm a wildlife management specialist for University of Maryland Extension, and I do a lot of work on everything from deer and growing big deer and dealing with deer damage in a lot more cases, as well as habitat improvement for a variety of species, especially a focal species of mine, which is the bobwhite quail. Today's speaker, I'm really excited to share about Matt Neff. He's the Curator of Estuarine Biology at Calvert Marine Museum. He grew up in Arlington, Virginia, so he's a local to the area. Went to college at Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York, and he got a degree in biology and a concentration in environmental studies. He graduated in 2008 and worked at Long Branch Nature Center over in Arlington, Virginia. Some of you may know of that center. And soon after that, got a job at the National Zoo, where he worked as a zookeeper. About 2.5 years ago, he had this opportunity to come up at the Calvert Marine Museum. His favorites are herpetology, which is the study of reptiles and amphibians. And he manages at the Calvert Marine Museum a living collection of 500 to 700 animals, covering 75 different species of fish, but also reptiles, amphibians, and of course, the famous river otters, which are a big attraction at the Calvert Marine Museum. If you haven't had a chance to go down there, it's a great spot to bring your kids. There's a lot of hands-on activities. So check out the Calvert Marine Museum. I'll put a link to their website in the chat. So Matt's going to talk to us all about frogs and how to listen for them and learn more about them. With that, I will turn it over to Matt. I want to say thank you for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for coming out, and thank you for the really good bio, Luke. But yeah, basically, the numbers of the animals that we have in our collection changed just this morning when we had a bunch of jellyfish strobulating. So now we have about 150 baby jellyfish, so it's always exciting. Today we're going to be learning all about frogs. And here's my contact info too. That'll be on the last slide as well. And I believe Luke has that as well, just in case anyone wanted to reach out to me afterwards. But we're going to be learning about who's calling and also how to get involved. So what are we going to be talking about today? So we'll be talking about amphibians and some problems they're facing locally and globally. You'll learn about what the Calvert Marine Museum is doing. You'll be learning about FrogWatch, which is a citizen science program that I lead here at the Marine Museum. And at the really end, we'll learn about 5 species, really common ones that are calling now. Plus, we'll learn about some state endangered species as well. So just Amphibian 101. I don't know what everyone's background is. So these are kind of very basic amphibian facts and things like that. But they are ectothermic or cold-blooded. Slimy skin and gelatinous eggs are some characteristics of being an amphibian, and most of them lack claws. Amphibian means 2 lives, really. So for the most part of their lives are going to be in the water and the other part on land. Obviously, with those asterisks you see, there's always exceptions to the rule with science. We always try and define what nature is doing, but nature is going to do what it wants to do on its own. So yeah, there's always exceptions to the rules. Amphibians are one of the oldest vertebrate classes alive. So they appeared on Earth over 350 million years ago. So they've been around for quite some time. So again, just with Amphibian 101, there are 3 orders of amphibians. So most people have heard about frogs and toads. And there's I just checked this morning, so I know the number has not changed, but 7,800 just over species of frogs and toads. For salamanders, which you can see with the red salamander right here, there's about 825 species of salamanders identified so far. And then with Sicilians, a lot of people have not heard about these guys before because they're more equatorial, going to be in very warm regions of the Earth. So you can kind of find them in Central and South America, equatorial Africa, and Southeast Asia as well. They can be fossorial, they can be aquatic. So they're still learning a whole lot about them. When I first started doing this talk about 12 to 13 years ago, there was only 150 species of Sicilians known. Now it's 225, so they are definitely finding more and more. Canary in the coal mine is, a lot of folks know what that analogy means, and it's frequently used for amphibians. So essentially, what canary in the coal mine means, if you don't know, it can indicate environmental changes that are difficult to detect in other species. just because amphibians are very sensitive and have permeable skin that absorb oxygen. Some breathe through their skin. It also absorbs moisture, but it doesn't really discriminate what enters their body. So a lot of the times toxins and pollutants can also get absorbed through their skin into their body. And because most of their life cycles includes time both in water and on land, it also increases exposure to pollutants that can be out in the environment. So with amphibian declines, there have been dramatic declines over the past 30 years. Globally, about half of all amphibians are threatened with extinction. So this one right down here is a picture of a Panamanian golden frog I used to work with at the zoo. And these guys are extinct in the wild. They only exist in captivity right now. And so some problems that are facing the Panamanian golden frogs and also all amphibians are habitat loss and fragmentation, pollutants, introduction of non-native invasive species, climate change, and parasites and disease. And so when I do this program for a lot of kids, I ask, hey, what of these kind of 5 things right here have happened locally? And the answer is all of them. And so one of the ones I do like to kind of bring up is chytrid fungus. So that is affecting the Panamanian golden frogs and a lot of kind of more tropical species of frogs right now. They do believe potentially in the 50s through 70s, chytrid fungus kind of moved through the United States and moved south. So a lot of the species that we have locally can adapt or learn how to cope with chytrid fungus. The redback salamanders actually have microbes on their skin that inhibit the growth of chytrid. Other species like bullfrog and green frog can bask that kills chytrid. But where the Panamanian golden frogs are in these kind of high cloud forests, you really can't do any of that. And it's just the perfect moist, cool temperature for the fungus to survive. But essentially, these little kind of fungus cells, the spores actually swim almost like a sperm, they kind of look like, but they will actually seek out frogs. And the spores will burrow into the skin and develop into what you kind of think of as like a fruiting body. And pretty quickly, it spreads throughout the animal. And so in about 120 days of first kind of infection, the animals will pass away. So what can you do? That's always what a lot of folks are worried about. So locally, we can create habitat, plant native. A lot of native species rely on native plants. Limit pesticide use, and also limiting fertilizer use as well. Disinfecting hiking gear as you're going from different sites to different sites, just so you're not spreading invasive seeds or anything like that, but also so you're not spreading any diseases as well. Zoos and aquariums are doing a lot as well, and so this is kind of more on a grand scheme of things of what you can't necessarily do at home, but captive rearing and head starting. So essentially is kind of giving tadpoles, right? It really depends on if you're just raising up eggs that are collected in the field or if you're just doing 100% captive breeding. But basically, once the animals get to a certain size, are released back out into the wild, but clearly you need permits and you need to be working with state agencies to do that. Education of these topics to the public is super important, kind of like what I'm doing now. But also there's different studies that you can do. If you guys have not heard about eDNA, that's just environmental DNA. So you can take a sample of water and you can see if certain fish or amphibian species actually exist in that water based on kind of the sloughing of skin cells and things like that. Combating chytrid, you can do, I know Smithsonian, when I worked there, was looking at some studies and trying to culture the biomes on the redback salamanders and seeing if they can be introduced to the biomes on different frogs that are susceptible to chytrid. We found out there was not really a good way to do that, but again, maybe another future study can find a really successful way of doing that. But also field work, kind of seeing how frogs are doing in general, how other amphibian species are doing. Are they spreading to different sites? Are they being eliminated from sites they used to be found in? So there's a lot that's going on currently. So what is the museum doing? So 4 things I wanted to talk about. We just opened up a new exhibit on the eastern hellbender and kind of talking about how they used to live in the bay. We got some native plant gardens as well on campus so folks can kind of walk around and see what the grounds look like, as well as starting a frog pond. We got a grant through the Chesapeake Bay Trust to install some acoustic recorders. So I'll be talking about that in more detail. And also we'll be talking about FrogWatch, which is our citizen science program that we have here at the Marine Museum. So hellbenders, these guys are the largest salamander in North America, the third largest on Earth. They can get upwards of about 29 inches, I think, is the maximum size ever. The ones we have now are around 20 to 22 inches. These are the same hellbenders I used to work with when I was at the National Zoo. So that's why you don't burn bridges, right? And that's why it's really great that we were able to work with my old colleagues so we could actually get 2 hellbenders here. And so one of the big things that we are talking about at the Marine Museum is hellbenders actually used to be found in the very northern part of the Chesapeake Bay. Not anymore. It's been about maybe 50, 60 years since the last ones have actually been spotted in any of the little kind of offshoots off of the bay. So north of Baltimore, the Chesapeake Bay is freshwater, which a lot of people do not realize. So what we are talking about here, without sounding too preachy, is getting folks to kind of realize, hey, here are some human impacts that have happened, and these are some reasons why the hellbenders are not found in the bay anymore. Some of the native plant gardens as well, just because we don't really have any behind the scenes at the Marine Museum. We have a pretty major road that kind of runs right along the side of us. We have a big waterway that's on another side of us, and then the entrance is another side, and then just kind of public exhibits. So it's hard to hide stuff. So we initially wanted to do the native plant garden to kind of hide some of the more utility stuff coming into the building, but also to try and get people to kind of come out and just beautify the space a little bit more. A lot of folks are kind of stuck inside to look at a lot of our really cool exhibits in our collection. But we wanted to try and get folks to kind of say, hey, these are some really pretty plants, and a lot of this can just be grown locally. We also had a local Eagle Scout project installing a frog pond. And so pretty soon after, we had this little tiny guy, looks like a green frog, move in. But we currently have about 10 green frogs and bullfrogs that have moved in as well that we're super excited about. We also got this grant through the Chesapeake Bay Trust to get these acoustic recorders that you see pictured right here. And so what we are doing, we are working with some local schools. We have the Forest Career and Tech Center in Leonardtown, Maryland. They're kind of like you can go and learn about kind of more hands-on in the fields of kids have an interest in biology and sciences. They can take this class, which is natural resource management, and learn about the captive care of animals, but then also they get to participate in some field work. So they're more than happy to jump into this pond. So this is one of the vernal ponds that we are monitoring. So you can see the acoustic recorder right here. This very big vernal pool, which actually has dried up. I think now with all the rain we had the past few days, there is water in it again. But again, the kids are more than happy to kind of jump and splash. And we did see some really cool animals as well. Before school went out for the year, I did go through and listen, and we did get, I think as of the beginning of May, we got spring peepers, we got wood frogs, we got spadefoot, and we also got, I believe, green frog and a leopard frog here. So I'm hoping this could be an area maybe where we'll get some state endangered species too, but I'll go into that in a little bit more. We also work with St. Mary's College of Maryland to do FrogWatch there, which I think is how Luke initially found out about me and some of the work that I do. But it's also one of our study sites as well for this acoustic monitoring. So we went out with a bunch of students. They thought I was a croc hunter because I jumped into the pond right here, just rolled up my pants, took off my shoes. I did see some egg masses of spotted salamanders here. I was looking at the sphagnum that you can kind of see behind me, and I was like, this looks like it could be good habitat for four-toed salamanders. And then pretty quickly, one of the students found a four-toed salamander, which is pretty cool. So working with local schools, I think, is really important just to train the next generation, but then also for folks that are in high school and or college that are looking to break into the field, learning some kind of field techniques like acoustic monitors, I think is very important. So I'll get into this in more detail kind of at the end, so will be to be continued. But currently right now, we have 6 different sites that we are monitoring with these acoustic recorders. So one at the American Chestnut Land Trust up in Prince Frederick, here at the Calvert Marine Museum, the James A. Forest Career and Technology Center, as well as St. Mary's College down here in southern St. Mary's County. We're also working with the Nanjemoy Creek Environmental Education Center with their Master Naturalist program, as well as Myrtle Grove Wildlife Management Area. And these were specially selected for a reason, but again, to be continued. So we will go to that in a little bit. So FrogWatch, so it's a perfect segue for FrogWatch. It's run by the Akron Zoo currently. They took over in 2022. AZA took over FrogWatch from 2008 to 2021. I think 2008 was Year of the Frog for AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. But FrogWatch did initially began in 1998 through the USGS, and it's hosted by local chapters nationwide. Currently, there's about 138 chapters across 38 states, and it is growing. There is a big kind of focus on the eastern half of the U.S. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums, when they led FrogWatch, they are based out of Silver Spring, Maryland. So you can see there is kind of a big East Coast influence on that, just to getting chapters started up. But now that everyone has learned how to do Zoom and Teams and all these kind of teleworking conferences and things like that, there are new chapters popping up everywhere. So specifically, the Southern Maryland and surrounding DMV chapter is the one that I lead. It's our local chapter, and it started in 2013 when I was at the National Zoo. So back then it was just called, I think, the National Zoo DC chapter. When I moved down to Southern Maryland, we kind of were able to absorb all the old sites that we had and parks that we were working with, like Huntley Meadows and Alexandria. Well, we are now in our 13th season. So we do have sites across the DMV, so DC, Maryland, and Virginia, all over, Southern Maryland as well. But we also have a few sites in West Virginia and Pennsylvania as well. And so you can see kind of here with the chart, especially when Field Scope was implemented, which I will go into in, I think, maybe the next slide. It kind of started taking off with around 300 to 400 observations, kind of the COVID years, and then the changing of who's managing FrogWatch, it kind of died down a bit. But then when I moved down to Southern Maryland, it really picked up just because there's a lot of habitat down here in Southern Maryland. You don't really have to work with local parks to get permission to go on their property to survey. You can do it in your own neighborhood. It really took off. And just this year already, we're about a little bit over halfway through, and we already have 584 observations, which is pretty astounding. I'm blown away by it, which is great. So before we get into Maryland's frogs, I'm going to try and see. Hopefully everyone can look and see Field Scope right here. And so this is kind of where we input all the data. So if you go to the main page, you can kind of see there's almost 200,000 observations nationwide. But as we go, we can kind of go to the data that the current chapter has. So people have done some sites when they were on vacation, but majority of the sites, as you can see, are going to be here in Southern Maryland, but they're also in the DC, Northern Virginia region, as well as kind of the Maryland Beltway region. But when I worked at the zoo, we do have a location out in Front Royal, so I was able to kind of get some folks in West Virginia and Front Royal as well. And then we do have some folks that are kind of home from college, from St. Mary's College of Maryland, that are doing some observations in Pennsylvania. I am hoping to get some folks on the Eastern Shore, so if anyone is interested and lives on the Eastern Shore, please reach out to me with my email, but also Charles County would be great. But honestly, anywhere would be awesome. There is, I believe, a FrogWatch chapter in Baltimore that I helped get started because I am a regional coordinator too. But yeah, you can basically see where all these observations are occurring. So it's super exciting. We have over 4,700 since we started in 2013. So it's just growing every year, which I'm just, again, amazed by. So back here to go to Maryland's frogs. So we have 23 species of frogs here in Maryland. So there's 16 that you can find in Southern Maryland, 17 if we're really lucky, and there is a barking tree frog down here, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So we have 5 families. So the Ronidae, Bufonidae, Hylidae, Paleobatidae, which are the eastern spadefoot, and then Microhylidae, which are the narrowmouth toads. And when we do the FrogWatch training, we go over all 16 that can be found in Southern Maryland, but we're just doing the abridged version right now of what you can hear that's currently calling. But frog calls are super important, and the beauty about programs like FrogWatch, you don't actually have to go into the wetland and see all these animals. You can just listen from your porch and hear them, and each frog can be identified by just their call alone. And this is a little article that kind of came out right here, and you can read the headline. And basically just from someone hearing what sounded like a wood frog that would normally call in the really late winter, early spring, calling in the middle of summer, which is very odd. And it turns out it was not a wood frog, it was a leopard frog when we went to go investigate, but it didn't sound like a leopard frog. And they did DNA analysis and found out it is a new species of frog. It has been found up and down the East Coast. I don't think it's been found in Maryland yet, But again, programs like FrogWatch can kind of help expand the range of the species. So American bullfrog, these guys are pretty classic. 3 to 6 inches is normal. 8 inches there is the record. They are the largest frog in North America. They're native on the eastern half of the U.S. They're invasive in other parts of the U.S. But basically, these guys can eat things as large as other frogs, small rodents, and even small birds as well. So most local frogs prefer ponds and slow-moving bodies of water. And I will imitate these calls. Even if you guys find it funny, it will help you remember these calls, but also some field marks as well. Most folks confuse these guys with the green frog. Okay. And as you can see, this green frog right here has a lateral line or a little ridge that goes down their back, whereas the bullfrog does not have that. The bullfrogs are calling right now, and it's a very deep brum, brum, or sometimes they say juggo. So you can listen right now.
American bullfrog, Lithobates catebianus, formerly Rana catebiana.
So I think you guys get the point. So the largest frog is going to be the deepest call. The smallest frog will have the more higher pitch calls. So these guys are calling right now. I just heard some the other night. Green frogs are often confused with the bullfrogs. Again, I just kind of showed you guys field marks. I've seen green frogs that are brown and bullfrogs that are green. So really just the one way to tell is this kind of lateral ridge that goes down their side, but also their calls as well. So these guys kind of sound like a banjo string being plucked. Or if you ever remember making those cereal box guitars with the rubber bands when you were in elementary school, kind of sound like that. It always sounds like a hard swallow, like in like a cartoon, like that. So they're calling right now, and this is what they sound like.
Green frog, Lithobates clamitans, formerly Rana clamitans.
And I even hear these guys sometimes calling around my house during the day. But yep, they are currently calling as well.
Green.
The next one is the eastern spadefoot. So these guys randomly come out throughout kind of April, May, and June, usually tied with a big rain event. These guys really prefer like sandy, loamy soil so they can burrow down. So these guys are kind of their own little group. They're not really a toad, even though they have the bumpy skin. So they get their name from this little keratinized spade that is on their hind feet that kind of help them shimmy down into the soil. Another good field mark is their elliptical pupils that other local species of frog do not have. Their call sometimes is confused with the Fowler's toad that I'm not playing for you guys today, just because they're not currently calling. But kind of like a sick cow, like moo, moo, kind of like that. These guys are explosive breeders, so normally they will come out to a vernal pool once or twice a year, and that is it. And their tadpoles can turn over in 2 to 3 weeks from egg to little spadefoot baby. So this is what they sound like.
Eastern spadefoot, Scaphiopus holbrookii.
So usually when you hear spadefoot again, it is not going to be one. It is going to be a full chorus of them because they are those explosive breeders. So our intern actually just heard some of these the other night when it was raining. So if you keep your ears out, you might hear some kind of more rare species like eastern spadefoot.
Eastern.
We also have eastern cricket frogs. They used to be called the northern cricket frog. There's just been some taxonomic changes sometimes. But these are some of the smallest ones that we have locally. These guys aren't normally confused with a whole lot. They are in the tree frog group, which sounds kind of weird. But if you look real close at their toes, there are tiny little toe pads, even though these guys normally stay pretty low to the ground. They do have the kind of the bumpy skin, but their field mark is going to be this little triangle right here. And they're really variable in color, which is why I have so many pictures of them. But no matter what their patterns are, they're always going to have that kind of triangle pattern on them. And these guys sound like crickets. I think that kind of sounds like a hollow sound of like a spray paint can rattling or hitting marbles together. It's like a little clack, clack, clack.
Northern cricket frog, Acris crepitans.
So if you listen to this, I don't think they really sound like crickets. Crickets aren't going to be calling in a body of water either, so that's one way to tell the difference. So I heard a lot of these guys calling last night or not last night, but the other night when it was raining, along with green frogs, bullfrogs, corkscrew tree frogs, and green tree frogs. So there's a lot of stuff calling in this one pond in southern Maryland. So here is the green tree frog. So these just got reclassified. They used to be Hyla cinereus or Hyla cinerea. Now it's Dryophytes cinereus. So basically their species name corresponds with this white racing stripe they have down their back. I don't know why, but for some reason in southern Maryland, a lot of them lack this racing stripe that they get their name from. But they are a fairly large tree frog down here that's bright green. They can be brown as well. These guys sound like a traffic jam, like a little honking, maybe like of a bicycle horn or clown car. So they're pretty unmistakable with what they are. So they're calling right now down here in southern Maryland.
Green tree frog, Hyla cinerea.
I think you guys got the point, but a really pretty frog. And also right now we have the gray tree frog complex calling. Down here in southern Maryland, it's Dryophytes chrysosceles, which is the Cope's gray tree frog. In other areas, it can be versicolor, which is the gray tree frog. Essentially, it's a resonating trill, like a just like that. The Cope's gray tree frog has a more rapid call than the gray tree frog. If you take a look with these pictures, they look almost identical. Again, this is actually tricky because it is both pictures of the Cope's gray tree frog. I just wanted to show you there's no difference. They can be a little bit more greenish. They could be a lighter gray. They could be kind of a darkish brown. But they're usually going to have, kind of, you can see it right here on its foot, that's a little bit yellow. Their back legs are bright yellowish orange. So basically the only way to tell the difference between these guys is their calls or DNA. So I'll play the Cope's, I'll pause it, I'll play the gray tree frog, and then I'll play them both together so you can kind of hear how the Cope's gray tree frog here on the left just has a more rapid call than the gray tree frog. A more rapid trill, if you will.
Cope's gray tree frog, Hyla chrysosceles.
So I'll pause that. Here is the gray tree frog.
Gray tree frog, Hyla versicolor.
So you can hear the trill, it's just not as rapid. And here's both together. You guys get the point. If you do happen to take FrogWatch, you could always put gray tree frog complex, and then it kind of counts for both of them. When I lived in Alexandria, when I was at the National Zoo, I had a pond in my backyard. I actually had both of these species calling. So there was a majority Cope's gray tree frog, but I did have about 2 or 3 gray tree frogs that were also at my pond as well.
Cope's gray.
All right. So this is a good spot to come right back to kind of what we're doing here at the Calvert Marine Museum and show kind of why I selected these areas. One, I want to obviously educate, our youth and stuff like that. But if you take a look, you can see we do have some state endangered species like the carpenter frog and the eastern narrowmouth toad that could potentially be in these areas as well. So down here at the Marine Museum, I think as high up as kind of the last third of Calvert County could be a potential range for the eastern narrowmouth toad. Definitely down here in southern St. Mary's. So I'm really hoping that we can get some at the tech center and at the college, just because, the students would be excited about that. But we're also working with the Nanjemoy Creek Environmental Education Center, the Charles County Master Naturalist Group, and Myrtle Grove Wildlife Management Area, and a few other areas with the state as well, to hopefully get the carpenter frog. Both of these guys are state endangered, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not a very rare frog. They're kind of southeastern ranging. It's just we are the most northern part of the range up into Delaware. So the carpenter frog gets its name by what its call sounds like. Ricket, 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 kind of like a hammering sound.
Carpenter frog, Lithobates virgatipes, formerly Rana virgatipes.
So pretty cool. Most of the time, people are not going to be hammering in a wetland in the middle of the night. So yeah, a pretty unique sound. And the eastern narrowmouth toad kind of sounds like a sheep. I'm going to spare you guys and not imitate it. I'll just play it for you.
Eastern narrow-mouthed toad, Gastrophryne carolinensis.
And I will stop. So normally it's not that loud. I think this person, when they were recording, had the microphone pretty close to them. They are a small animal. It's not as in your face when you actually hear it out in the wild. But yeah, I am hoping this year we will get some state endangered species with the FrogWatch chapter, but also for the sake of this study too.
Carpenter frog.
And also, there's a potential for the barking tree frog. So I will kind of get into what they sound like. Again, with their name barking, they do sound sort of like a beagle a little bit.
Barking tree frog, Hyla gradios.
So these guys are not thought to be found in southern Maryland, but if we zoom out a little bit right here, they are found a little bit south of the northern neck of Virginia, and they are found on the eastern shore and in Delaware as well. So if you think about it, southern Maryland's right in between those ranges. So potentially, just because they have not been found yet doesn't mean they don't exist. So there's a chance, but really basically you kind of have to go out and listen, and you might be surprised. But we did also just get some additional acoustic recorders through a gentleman that works at Chestpax, Tom Harton. He was a part of the Maryland Amphibian and Reptile Atlas. And so we have deployed a few more acoustic recorders. So we have 2 more that are right here at the Pax River Naval Base. I'm working with some research there. I am working with the state, and we do have another one close to Myrtle Grove Wildlife Management Area. It's just in another part of Charles County. And then with the Virginia Herpetological Society, we got permission. We just did a survey, I think like 2 weekends ago, and we kind of were focusing on some areas in the northern neck and kind of King George County. So right here near the Rappahannock. And we have one in a national wildlife refuge there. We got permission to hopefully get some cool species. So who knows what we'll find. But essentially, in a nutshell and very quick, that's everything that we're doing. So if you guys have questions, I can open it up to you guys. And I also have my email here. It'll be in the chat as well, just in case you guys, if you thought of a question later on, if you want to kind of learn how to get involved in FrogWatch. We normally do trainings in January and February, but I'm more than happy to kind of do a really quick and dirty training for any of you guys that are interested, just because now is when a lot of the state endangered species would be calling, like carpenter frogs, eastern narrowmouth toads, and barking tree frogs if you're in Virginia, or if you are in the northern kind of eastern shore area. So I will stop sharing my screen and then open it up if you guys have any questions. If you guys had any interest with FrogWatch, you could just reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to kind of do a quick and dirty presentation for y'all. Even though a lot of the early spring callers are not going to be calling, this is the season for a lot of the state endangered species like the eastern narrowmouth toad, and also with the carpenter frog, but then also the barking tree frog if you are kind of in Tidewater area of Virginia or the northern part of the eastern shore of Delaware. Or even if there's no state endangered species by you, it's still a fun program. A lot of folks really just kind of want to go out and see what's calling around them.
Great. Matt, we had a few questions coming
Awesome.
in that I'm looking forward to running by you. There was a couple of people asked, and I think it was a really good question, is Cyril as well as Christina were asking about whether the Maryland Biodiversity Project or iNaturalist sightings can get tied into some of the FrogWatch work. We were asking about iNaturalist and Maryland Biodiversity Project.
Yeah.
Info. Can that get tied into FrogWatch?
Yeah, essentially they can. A big thing that we were talking about with regional coordinators right now is what we're hoping to do is allowing more kind of acoustic monitoring, just because very historically for a lot of the kind of protocols and stuff like that for FrogWatch was you have to be kind of there in person and hear it. But obviously recording is getting more and more high tech. And for that reason, we are hoping to kind of utilize more techniques like that and to upload sound files I don't think there's a way to kind of really incorporate it into iNaturalist unless you put it in there yourself. But I think that's kind of down in the future, what they're really looking to try and do with both of them. But I think that's why they do field scope right now, just at least it's not like their own naturalist. But yeah, I think a lot of the protocols, they are trying to adapt with the times. And so they're allowing a lot more just acoustic recording or just any recording from devices and things like that to identify local species.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm sure data quality and making sure it's the right species is one of those tricky things.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything's good. We have a couple of reports. A couple of people, one person, Karen from the Eastern Shore, said she'd email you about getting some monitoring going on.
Please do. I mean, we would be super excited for that.
Yeah.
I mean, we like people from everywhere, but just kind of expand the range. There are no chapters on the Eastern Shore or that little kind of Delmarva Peninsula area. So there's no reason why they can't join kind of the Southern Maryland DMV chapter. I mean, I might even just change the name eventually just to be kind of more all-encompassing for like the Mid-Atlantic region.
Yeah. Great. We had Cyril mention that a gray tree frog is calling in her yard yesterday in North Baltimore County.
Awesome. Very cool.
Greg asked, and this might be something for us to check out, he asked if the Australian Frog ID Android app works for recognizing frog calls in our area. And I'm not familiar with that app, but maybe you are.
I am not sure. I guess you can try it when you hear frogs and see what it says. Because I know there's ones, like Merlin and stuff like that are out there for birds. I do remember someone saying there is one for frogs, but I didn't get the name of the app. It could be that one that you're talking about. But yeah, one big thing is just attend FrogWatch and you will learn them pretty quick. A lot of folks do kind of get overwhelmed. I was just talking to Luke about this earlier, but I have birder friends that know 300 calls. So 15 calls is not too much to ask for. And you'll be surprised as you will learn them very quick.
Cool. Someone asked, do we only have one species of toad?
We have Fowler's toad and American toads here. So we have two. If you go more towards kind of like the Tidewater area of Virginia, you start getting oak toads as well. And you also get, I believe, southern toads too. So thankfully, just two up here.
Cool. And then Maria had a couple of questions on, do we ever have any trouble with people messing with an ARU or an acoustic recording device? She mentioned she's disguised in them, and I can share some of my experience with that. But yeah,
thankfully, that's to be determined. When I went out to check a lot of them kind of in late April, early May, no one had messed with them yet. Yet, I guess, is the big key word, especially the ones that we use. I mean, I'm trying to get my webcam to work. For some reason, it's not. But essentially, we have the SM4, which are a little bit larger, kind of like you saw the picture in the slides. So those are a little bit harder to disguise. When we got some from Tom Harton that was working with the Mara project, he gave us some micros, and those are a little bit easier to disguise just because they're much smaller. I don't know how the sound is on the micros, just because I haven't really played around with them too much yet. I just put them in last week, but it's an internal microphone. But so far, no one's messed with, knock on wood. I mean, I try and disguise them a little bit higher up in the tree. I also just put a little QR code just saying Calvert Marine Museum with a QR code, so that it just goes right to the FrogWatch website, just so then folks kind of know what the project is for. But they're also, I mean, it is Southern Maryland too, so I mean, there are a lot of people, but especially for a lot of these parks too, I think it's much fewer than you would get that's in like the DC metro area.
Yeah. Yeah, we have not had any trouble. I've put out acoustic recorders for bobwhite quail and other bird monitoring, and we've not had any trouble. We do use a little bit of camouflage to make them a little bit more discreet. But also we put out, while on public land, we put a little notice because I believe in Maryland, it's not legal to record people without their knowledge. So we put a little sign near the device and say, we're running a research project, and if you're here in the early morning hours, 2 hours after sunrise, you may be recorded, to let everybody know. There was notification there, but we didn't have anybody take any of our recorders. So we've not had any problems with that yet. Maria also asked, I think interestingly, is what program are you using to read the data and analyze the data? And we were discussing this before we jumped on this webinar, but I can let you take a crack at it, and I can share some of the tools we've been.
Well, for me, I have downloaded the data. or downloaded the program called Kaleidoscope. That is kind of what they recommend with the equipment I got. So I really haven't had a chance to play with it just because I work for a county government, and just with security reason, I don't know, they're just a little bit afraid about the software. So I have to kind of download like my own like operating system on a separate computer and all this kind of stuff. So I have not had a chance to play with it yet. I've had recommendations of a few other programs if they don't work for some other people. So I guess that's TBD, but I'll end up having about 20,000 calls. So I definitely don't have the time or have enough interns to go through that data. I did listen to, I think about a month and a half's worth of data, at least for the high school before we got the acoustic monitoring kind of program to go through the sounds. And it took me about maybe 3.5 hours. And I was only basically listening to these little 5-minute clips. So yeah, it definitely takes some time.
Yeah. I will say we have some experience in the bird world, and we started by using something called Raven, which is a free software that you can annotate calls. I don't know, it's really designed for birds. So we've used that to develop our machine learning classifiers, which is a whole sort of another set of software that we use. But you can train, the way this works is you usually train a model and then you can run a model on your data afterwards. And so we're using acoustic monitoring data from the Kitces lab at the University of Pittsburgh. He has a great website called Open Soundscapes, and they have, code that you can run, and you can train your own classifiers and run your own code. And that's what we've been using for bobwhites. There are a lot of other programs. We're also using Hawk Ears, which is a bird set of software that identifies about 200 birds throughout North America. I know Cornell has BirdNet, which is a freely available program that you can use for birds. And we experimented for a while using a program called Arbimon, Arbimon. And that's another tool that I think could be possible. We didn't end up using that significantly, but we explored it for a while for identifying calls. And then finally, I'll add in another software called Wildtrax. And that's Wildtrax. And that seems to be a very similar type of software as Merlin. And it's used for classifying calls. And so you will have a recording and you can look at the spectrogram and you will manually annotate the calls that you're looking for. And then the software can then know that that's what you're looking for and then run through the rest of your data. So I think we're going to start shifting over to Wildtrax. It seemed like it was a little bit smoother of a classification software tool, and it's cloud-based and you can share it with other people and things like that. So a lot of different stuff in there. So Maria, hopefully some of that was useful to you. Feel free to drop any other questions in the chat. Oh, I see we have one more. I think we had bat detectors. We had to download Dropbox. Something was tricky, but tech probably has changed since then. Yes, tech is always going very fast with these things. And there's a lot of programs. I think I'll be up to date and then I'll find out there's a whole new program out there. So, yeah.
I know for bat detectors as well, I know for a lot of them, sometimes you have to get software or at least an acoustic recorder that is able to detect very high frequencies. So sometimes I think you need to look into that beforehand before you even get the recorder as well. And then also for the analysis software too. So that's something I learned from some other FrogWatch folks that had previously done acoustic recorders for other species.
Yeah, I was surprised. We wanted to program we've got recorders going at Point Pleasant Farm out on the Eastern Shore, and we looked at doing bats. The thing is, when you increase your frequency recording, it also increases the amount of data each file takes. So it ends up, when you record it at very high frequencies, your data files are 4 times larger. So that would have filled up all of our data cards very quickly. So we opted out of doing that for now. But I do think that's something to think about in the future for sure. A lot of different applications for bioacoustics. And I would definitely throw a plug in for Justin Kitces out at University of Pittsburgh and his Open Soundscape. His whole lab is focused on bioacoustics, and they're doing great work across the region on using these to detect birds and other animals. So great. I know we got a couple minutes left. I know I was interested in learning a little bit more about the hellbender.
Yes.
How do you find them? It seems as though they're relatively rare. Are they cryptic? Are they buried in the mud? What's their range? And can you tell us a little more about what's
I got my camera to work, so that's good. I just pulled it up on my laptop. Yeah, so hellbenders, I was actually really shocked. So for hellbenders, they're more of an Appalachian species. And so when I first started here at the museum, obviously you guys know I have a herpetology bias. And so I was looking like, what cool herps can we get here? And then one of the ones that I was looking at, I saw hellbenders who are found in eastern Maryland. And I was like, well, that sounds really weird to me. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they really are. And when it turns out, they're just coming down the Susquehanna that forms the Chesapeake. And so they're in the really northern part there. And yeah, so essentially what happened is hydroelectric dams generate power, but animals can't pass through them. So there are, I believe, 4 hydroelectric dams between the beginning of the bay, the Conowingo Dam, and Harrisburg. So that's already right there. No more new stock of hellbenders are coming down. And then the ones that are stuck here are then, you have to deal with, algal blooms from like fertilizers, pesticide use, introduced species like brown trout for fishing, siltation from urbanization, warming temperatures. And I was actually just at the annual meeting at the Virginia Herpetological Society. It was a joint meeting with the North Carolina Herpetological Society. And there was a study on forest cover and how it affects hellbenders. Because you're like, well, they're not living on land. How does that affect them? But a lot of the tree cover with, shade and cooler temperatures, absorbing, a lot of that siltation coming off of, farms or urbanization, that all kind of goes hand in hand. So just a lot of things that affected them, and they're not found here anymore. When I was at the zoo, I had 18 hellbenders I was taking care of. So I was kind of over hellbenders. But here it's just 2 cute hellbenders. And yeah, my old boss was like, oh, we want to give you 6. And I said, absolutely not. We don't have the room for that because we're just a small little museum. But yeah, we have 2 on exhibit right now, a male and a female. So they came from the National Zoo where we had them. We were doing kind of studies with them. But they initially came from the Buffalo Zoo that works with DNR in New York, and they do head starting. So I'm hoping with a lot of collaborations, just because I'm very new to Southern Maryland, so just kind of learning, all the people that are around. Maybe one day we can get involved with DNR and do some kind of head starting thing if there's interest there. But for the time being, just kind of working with DNR and finding, local species, working with local organizations and stuff like that. But yeah, hellbenders are just a neat animal. They don't look like they're real. They have a lot of names like snot otter and old lasagna sides and Allegheny alligator and things like that. They look really gnarly. I actually do have this laptop doesn't fall down. I do have a fake one that I have for educational programs that I have hanging in my office right here, just to kind of show you guys kind of up close if you couldn't really see it from the pictures. This is what a hellbender looks like. And you can see it's obviously not alive, right? It's just a model. But they call it old lasagna sides, so you can kind of see the sides right here. So they have a lot of surface area on their skin. A big reason is because they have lungs, but they don't have the lungs to breathe. They actually have the lungs to act like a swim bladder, kind of like a fish. And so they have all this extra skin just to kind of help absorb oxygen. So they need fast moving and cold stream to survive in. But yeah, this one is about, the model is, I think, 24 inches. So that would be like a standard adult size. It can get upwards of 29 inches. Like I said, ours are not quite as thick as this guy yet, but they are getting almost close to the length of this model right here.
And then I'd like to close, maybe we're just at the 1 o'clock hour, but I would love to hear some thoughts about what people can do in their regular practices. And I oftentimes hear, and what I share with people, and I'm curious if you would elaborate on any of this, but it seems like for chemicals entering the water stream can be one of the biggest challenges. So if using fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, to always follow the label, which usually means you don't spray right before rainfall. That can reduce any of that wet material flushing into the waterways that can cause damage. Anything you would add to that, people can do in their home daily use around their home to help improve the situation?
Yeah, it's just kind of, I think I did mention it in some of the slides too, and just some things you can do, but just plant native. I mean, you'll be surprised, but planting native will attract a lot of the native species as well. I've had some friends that live in Florida, which, everything is tropical there, and they have a lot of problems with invasive species, but you plant native plants, and that kind of benefits the native species, like native species of anole and things like that. I mean, there's other things you could do. I mean, I think a huge thing is education. Going out there and educate people. That's why I love working down here at the Marine Museum, where we only have native species or species that are found here, like some invasive species. Just because when I was working at the zoo, there was always this disconnect of, hey, here are Komodo dragons and, here are pandas and they're awesome. But then people go like, well, there's nothing I can do to kind of save them. And I'm like, well, we have local species that are really cool that you can't find anywhere else on Earth. Like, I mean, salamanders is one of them. So just trying to like draw in local species and just getting people excited about what's in their own backyard, because then they get a sense of ownership. And when you get a sense of ownership, you get pride. And then you really want to kind of protect that. And so I think that's one big thing we're really trying to focus down here at the museum, is just showing them, hey, look at all these cool things that are around here and just the little things you can do to kind of help benefit native species.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, something you said reminded me of something I learned a few years ago. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the Appalachian area in this part of the U.S. like one of the hot spots for amphibian biodiversity or in the world?
And that's one of my other talks, too.
What was that? Frogs?
Yeah, so I mean, I love anything. I mean, salamanders is probably my favorite, even though everyone knows me down here as the frog guy. People at the zoo knew me as the turtle guy. I like everything, but I think I might, if I can open up another presentation, let me actually see really quick. I can just show you just how they are kind of the hot spot on Earth. I know we are slightly over, but
it's all right. You're welcome to stay on, folks. We understand if you got to jump off. We will get this clipped into our YouTube recording afterwards. Feel free to hang out if you'd like. Would love it. I'll take this moment to plug that survey. I put it in the chat.
Yes, this is my
age of mountains. Appalachian Mountains are a very old mountain range, I guess. Is that part of how they've evolved to be?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, when everything was Pangea, essentially you didn't have, all these separations with all of these oceans. Everything was together. So Appalachia's, I don't know if it is accurately to say it's the oldest mountain chain, but is one of the oldest. And so you can kind of see here with biodiversity of salamanders right here is Appalachia. So Appalachia is home to about, I think, 90 species of salamanders, which is around 15% of the world's species. And then the hottest spot on Earth is going to be the Smoky Mountain National Park. That's ground zero right there for salamander diversity. I believe it's about, I think you can find 40 to 50 species just in the park alone. Some are not found outside of the park, which is crazy. So that little national park is home to probably close to 8% of the world's species. So it's just insane. And then you have a second hot spot, which is over here in the Pacific coast. So yeah, salamanders are a big deal. I mean, I think the slide before just kind of shows you just some of the diversity. Just, you can get these newts here and these torrent salamanders and ensatinas over in California, but you can get these really cool ambystoma, gray cheek salamanders and Yahtzee down in kind of the southwestern Virginia.
Cool. Now, that map has these big areas that are not colored at all.
Oh, yeah.
Is there aren't amphibians there, or we just don't know the distribution well?
Yeah, so that's actually the next slide, just kind of showing these gaps right here. There's, I think, 6 species found in Africa, and really they're just European species that just kind of happen to be there, like some fire salamanders and I think some newts. But again, they don't like hot. And they don't like dry. So you're not going to see any in Australia, Southeast Asia, anywhere over here in Asia, and not in any of the deserts as well. So, I mean, they don't like, tropical rainforest. They don't like dry. They don't like hot. So they need cool.
Wow. Cool. Oh, I learned something. That's awesome. I didn't know that they were.
And that's another talk. So I guess we could always do.
Yeah. Do it again.
I'm trying to get back to the right window. There we go.
Cool. Well, great. Well, I encourage anybody who wants to reach out. The best way to sign up for FrogWatch is to reach out by email to you directly, Matt. I shared the link to your page. Okay.
And I mean, if everyone has my email or you're free to share my email, please reach out to me. You don't have to be on the Eastern Shore, even though if you're on the Eastern Shore, I think you are required to email me now. But if you're not, just email me too. If you have any questions, even if you just want to send a sound file and say, hey, what is this? I can tell you. I mean, if it's local, if it's in like Costa Rica, I probably can't do that one. But.
Cool. Hey, well, thank you so much, Matt. I learned some things, and I hope the audience liked it as well, and look forward to keeping in touch on some of this stuff, and I hope we get some more members out on the Eastern Shore.
Sounds great. That would be awesome. And stop by the Marine Museum, guys, anytime you want to, down in Solomon.
All right. Take care. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a good one.